P&R with Adam R. Welcome to 3P&R. I'm your host, Adam R. And on this episode, I have Cloyd Steiger, homicide detective. Cloyd, how you doing, sir?
Doing good. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being on. I appreciate your time greatly.
Absolutely.
So we're going to get into what got you involved with law enforcement.
Okay. Is that a question? Or you just
Yeah. It's a question.
Okay.
Just what got Cloyd in there? What made Cloyd want to be a cop?
You know, I get asked this a lot, and it's kind of a hokey story. I decided I wanted to be a police officer when I was 10 years old because I was watching Adam 12 on TV, and I thought, man, that looks like a cool job. And so I just started looking into it, and I went to the library and got all the books I could find on what you have to do to be a police officer, and read them all. And then I went to school. When I was in school, I went to the library and got the same books. And as I got into high school, I was reading all those same type of books, and I was also reading some true crime stuff. And so I thought, I want to be a police officer, but I want to be a homicide detective at some point. So obviously I wanted, because I did want to do that. I didn't want to go to a small department. I wanted to go to a big metropolitan department where you could specialize in homicide. So I lived in the Seattle area. So when I was 20 and a half, I applied to the Seattle Police Department because that was the minimum age to apply. And a long story short, I went to the written test, and there were like 2,000 other people at the written test. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to get hired. But I had studied they'd sent me a study packet, a 150-page study packet before the test. And I literally memorized every word in that packet and looked at all the pictures and put them all to memory. And so a couple of weeks after I took the test, I got a card in the mail saying I was number 13 on their list. So that's how it started. I went through the process and got hired right at my 21st birthday. I was I was the second youngest person on the Seattle Police Department because there was a guy in my class who was 2 days younger than me. And we went from there. I just worked patrol, and eventually I went, I worked patrol. I did SWAT for a while when I was young. And I thought, if I want to do this detective thing, I got to do it pretty soon. So at that time you took a test for the detective. I took the test, I got on it, and got my first detective job as a precinct detective, kind of a generalist. Did that for a couple of years, had an opportunity to do sex crimes, which was a citywide downtown unit out of headquarters. And so I did that for 2 years, and then had an opportunity to go to homicide, and I took it. And I was there for the last 22 years of my career working homicides.
So it was in your DNA.
Yeah, well, that it was. I tell people all the time, this is something I was pre-programmed for this job because I have all the right personality traits, the way I can compartmentalize stuff. I think I was pre-programmed for this, and it was just a perfect fit.
Yeah, I mean, you have that go-getter attitude. I could tell in everything. Every time we spoke and everything I watch and read about you, you got that I'm going to get someone attitude. Well,
right, yeah, because it's my job. I always tell people, the murder happens. It's our job to get the son of a bitch that did it.
Yeah, agreed. And so you had some pretty good partners over the years too, huh?
Oh, I did. Yeah, really great partners.
Yeah, I'd spoken to Michael Ciesynski.
Ciesynski, Mike.
Yes,
yeah, Mike and I were partners for a number of years, and then he went to cold cases. And when he needed help on a cold case, he grabbed me, and I'd do a cold case with him. But yeah, so.
Yeah, he speaks very highly of you. How long has it been since you spoke to that guy?
Oh, I talk to him all the time. Yeah, I probably a week. I probably talked to him a week ago. Yeah. We stay in contact.
He's a likable guy, and he speaks in his stories. Like when I'd spoken, I got chills. He was telling some of the stories he's talking about with the serial killers gave me chills.
Oh yeah.
And I've been watching more of these shows about people interviewing serial killers because since you and I'd spoken, I've taken a bigger interest. And my God, man, talk about personality splits. Those guys they legit live in two different realities.
They do, yeah. I've interviewed a couple of serial killers over the years, and it's exactly right. You just got to know what you're doing. I always say interviewing anybody, it's like being a fisherman. You put the line out there and you get a nibble, and you slowly reel in, and they want to go off on a tangent. You let some line out and let them go for a while, and then you slowly bring it back, and then they want to go out and you let some more line out. It's a long process. It can take hours.
Yeah, talking to Michael, one of the guys he was talking to, like they were speaking to each other like, two regular guys.
Yeah.
And he mentioned one of the victims that got away, and the guy's personality, his demeanor completely altered.
I worked that case with Mike.
Scary.
That was Dwayne Lee Harris. Yeah.
Yeah, and you read about that case, like the guy was he was content with going out and having lunch with you guys and feeding you information. Man. But
then he'd switch when he talked about his kills, he got guttural, and you saw the animal side of him come out.
That's why I tell the people that when they investigate the paranormal, right? And they're like, well, I don't understand why some of these ghosts are so mean. I'm like, listen, look at people. People are crazy, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
So
that's exactly right.
Yeah, as you are here, as you are outside, right? So
exactly, yeah. Who we are was what you are, right?
Yeah, the dynamic of having a partner in homicide, it's good because it allows you to bounce ideas off one another, right? So you're not looking at things from one set of eyes.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you have to have two different angles, and you can bounce ideas off each other and do that. It's absolutely imperative because it's hard to work a case all by yourself because you sometimes get tunnel vision, and you have to have somebody else tell you what's happening outside your little purview. Yeah,
so that could be the case in a lot of things, right? Mostly, especially I'm going to assume when you're working a case that's frustrating you, right? And then you get fixed on one person and one piece of evidence, and it'll overwhelm you, I imagine. And I guess it's good to have someone to rely on that can cast that other sound out.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the thing is, you really have to avoid getting hooked on one person like that. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be.
Speaking of Mike,
here he is.
Mike, how you doing, sir?
Hey, what's happening? What's happening, guys?
Yeah, I didn't tell Cloyd we're going to surprise Cloyd with Michael tonight.
Yeah, there he is. Yeah, late as usual.
Can you see me?
No. We're audio only. You're good, Mike.
That's what I thought. I was looking at Cloyd's mug on thing. I said, "Oh no." So what's happening, guys?
Nothing. We're talking about how Cloyd kind of spoke about how he became a cop. We'll ask you the same question in a minute. We were just talking about the dynamic of having a partner in homicide and the ability to have a different set of eyes on things to kind of help you when things get stressful.
Well, sometimes your partner makes things stressful too, though. Which is that was not the case of Cloyd, though, at all.
Of course not. Yeah.
No. Bullshit.
Cloyd's an extremely likable guy, man. I'll say he's got that real go-getter attitude.
Yeah, well, some of the suspects didn't really see it that way, but that's another story.
Mike, that's Mike, how he ended up in Seattle as a cop. That's the good story.
Yeah. How about this, Mike? Start with what made you become a cop, and let's get to that. How'd you get to Seattle?
Oh, well, I was, as we spoke before, I was from Chicago, and I was in the suburb called Calumet City, Illinois. I was a policeman there, and I just, had hands in my pants. My wife and I, my young wife and I, wanted to try something different, and we headed off to Casper, Wyoming. I got hired there. I had a feeling something was wrong because I tested out there while I was going skiing, and they hired me the same day. But that was a little bit of a culture shock coming from South Chicago, going to Casper, Wyoming in the middle of winter. But I knew I didn't want to stay there for very long, even though Casper at the time was booming. It was the largest city in the state. They had a whopping 50,000 people. And so I just tested in Seattle, and I was lucky enough to get on, and I started on our birthday, Cloyd and I's birthday in 1983.
That's right. You guys share a birthday.
We do.
Yes. Yeah. And you could tell if I looked in the picture which one's older and younger.
I bet you I made birthday gifts for easy exchanges, right? There's no way to forget it.
Well, let Cloyd tell you.
Yeah, we always had a deal on our birthdays. I'd buy him a drink on his birthday, and he'd buy me a drink on my birthday. So
sounds like a long
whiskey always is flowing on October 3rd.
Yeah, that's right.
And people will be looking at us like we're nuts, and we partially were. But yeah, so and Cloyd was on in what, 79, I believe, right?
79, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So Cloyd he was an old timer and he got on. He was like a whopping 21
years old.
3 months, something like that.
21 and 1 month when I got on.
So he was, and that was a whole different era. Even when I started in Chicago in 1980, but that was a completely different than it has been like in the last 20 years. I mean, police work was so different back then.
Yeah.
And now, geez, it's quite different now.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're going to touch on tonight is I really want to influence more people. Like, we need the youth to be involved with law enforcement. Especially now where, and I don't agree with it. I think it's foolish. They're defunding police. Just ridiculous things are taking place everywhere. It's unrecognizable. And I'm going to give the ownership to that problem to social media.
Right.
I honestly believe people that they call themselves enemy of this country have just poured social media nonsense out there, and it's causing divide that we already have divide. We don't need new divide. You know what I mean? And without law enforcement, just try to imagine two neighbors that are heated over something, trying to, solve something on their own. That's never going to work out well.
You got to have a referee somewhere. Some impartial referee.
Yeah, there's got to be a buffer. Has to be.
Yeah.
Well, it's changed so much over the years anyway, and it always, we're always not crying about it, but the police were always whipping boys, always. They love the firemen, because the firemen came in kind of like after we were there, and then they just kind of leave. We're there for the bad thing that would go on. So and so is beating up the wife, and then the wife doesn't like us. Or we're arresting Junior. We're doing something like that, arresting a member of the family, or breaking up a good time, or ruining somebody's good time when they're out drinking and driving and stuff. We're always the bad guy, and for most people, and they're always suspicious. And anytime you look in, I don't care if you're a law-abiding citizen or not, you're driving down or even a cop, and you're driving down the road, and also you see the lights on the back of you. Oh shoot!
Well, yeah.
Was I speeding? And it's officer. Everything's real prim and proper all of a sudden.
Well,
that's the way it's always been, though.
Yeah, and the same can be said for the kid in the hallway when he's cutting class. You're going to feel, when you see a teacher, you're going to feel pressure, period. I wasn't a great kid. I got in trouble with the cops in my youth, right? But I never blamed them because I knew full well what I did was wrong. I owned it. I didn't say, oh, the cops did this to me, because they didn't do it to me. I was in this situation around people I shouldn't have been around. And then, you grow up and you learn from it. And in hindsight, not only do you have a respect for law enforcement, but you understand it better. Don't be in situations or get involved with people that are going to put you in a situation where you're going to have to deal with them in a negative light.
Well, back in the day, it was like that too, though. If you got caught by the police or something, you could say, well, number one, you didn't care if the police beat your butt, because you knew what was going to happen when they got on the phone and your parents had to come pick you up. Things were not going too well for you.
Yeah, for me as a kid, when I was in a troubled, I was in, hung around punks, you know what I mean? And there was one cop, Corporal Kovalik, right? Pinellas County Sheriff's. As much of as an asshole he came off, he actually meant well, right? He would listen, just go home, man. He wasn't, I look back at it now as an adult, he wasn't trying to arrest anyone. He was just trying to maintain peace, and he was trying to do his job. And he did. And now looking at it, he did a great job. And without him, who knows? Who knows who knows what happens in those neighborhoods if there wasn't that buffer? But for you and Cloyd as partners in homicide, right?
Yes.
I was talking to Cloyd about too, the story you and I were talking about the serial killer you dealt with and his demeanor change. That bothered me for days afterward, days. I actually ended up watching some documentaries and these interviews with serial killers, and you just looking at these people this could be the guy next door. He legit looks like a normal person that would be next door. I
always say that real serial killers don't look like Hannibal Lecter, because if they did, they'd be easy to avoid. They look like your neighbor, your mailman, the deacon of your church, like the BTK killer, that type of stuff. They look like regular people when they're not out killing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys I looked at, he looked like a normal person that would be an accountant. He looked very non-threatening. I would pass by him, never give him a second glance in life.
That's how come it was easy for him to get a victim, because everybody else did too.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
So you guys working together, what was your first case together that you could recall?
Harris case. Yeah, the Harris case was our first case. We weren't officially partners when we were working the Harris case.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, talk about that. That's the put together.
We had different partners, but we kind of came together because I got called. Mike got the first case of Denise Harris, no relation, in the jungle area of Seattle, and then I got the next case of Olivia Smith down off Airport Way near the stadiums. And then the third one was the Toinette Jones. I got called to that. It wasn't my case, but so then we finally matched these cases together. We kind of joined our investigations. We may have worked another case closely before that, but that's the first one I remember. We worked really closely, like between Mike and his partner at the time and me. It was like the three of us working the case.
Yeah, and there were some other dynamics there, with different squads and people want to look at it in different directions. And Cloyd and I, we were the young guys then. We were only on, in homicide for 2-3 years, I think it was, 4 years, and that's relatively new. And so the old guys kind of held the rein, the old sergeants did, and they kind of told what to do, or what their word meant more. And me and Cloyd were looking at, we thought right off the get-go, well, not right off the get-go, within 4 months, we thought, man, this is a serial killer. The guys, these women, they're tied, bound, their hands are bound with shoelaces, and their hands are so far apart, and they're strangled and gagged and stuff like that. And they're prostitutes or kind of like prostitutes or street whores, or they were just, they would sell themselves for drugs and homeless type. And so, but a lot of these guys, the other people, they didn't want to hear that, you guys watching too much TV talking about serial killers. And, Cloyd and I, we looking at each other like, what the heck, and we just had to put our heads down and keep going to work, because you didn't want to really make waves, especially when you're the young guys.
Yeah. Especially when you're the news, but that's especially at that time when you guys come on and you're noticing a pattern, that's the whole concept of having a new set of eyes, right? And you're not worn down by I guess what you could consider the usual way to go through it, right? You're seeing it from a different perspective.
Yeah, we always do it. We'd bounce ideas off each other and stuff, and we'd have prosecutors were on board at that time and stuff, and we just, you're right. We looked at it a lot differently because we were young and newer into the unit and stuff, and we looked at all types of scenarios, and we didn't really trust. We weren't trusted, and we didn't really trust some of the seniors that way.
Yeah. Well,
as it ends up, though, apparently we were right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, at one point they took, they had to take one of the cases away, and they ended up giving it to us, and that caused a little more ripple in the dynamics of the whole homicide unit, because you're giving it to these young guys, and that caused a little bit of problems. And their detectives were really good detectives, but they, for some reason, it must have been our sergeant sold it or something, but they said, yeah, you guys are going to be handling these cases, and that caused a little bit of a rift.
Yeah, but, it's a shot to the ego,
Oh yeah, especially in somewhere where egos are very big, like in homicide.
Yeah,
you have that big ego to work there in the first place. You have to be pretty darn confident. And but we were trying to stay out of the line of fire as much as we could. And but sometimes the other people were still kind of throwing darts at us. And this case went on for, I don't know what, 6-7 months, Cloyd, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least
like that.
And when we finally identified the suspect, we had him out of we take him out of the county jail, go on our little rides all the time. And we go on our little drives and stuff, and he'd point out where he was saying this other guy did it. And he said, yeah, he killed a girl over here, he killed a girl that. Then he brought us to some other places, like the Cloyd's case, where Antoinette Jones was strangled and murdered. Skeletal remains were found. So, every day we were out with this guy, and I don't know if I told you this before one time, Adam, but I checked. It was a holiday, and I was checking my voice messages, and he left me a message. He said, "Hey, Mike, this is Chili. I know it's a holiday and you're probably off, so I'll probably see you Tuesday or Wednesday, you and Cloyd. So have a nice holiday." And so I played the message again, and I had my wife listen to it. And I said, "Now, when was the last time a serial killer told you to have a nice holiday?" And she's like, "How do you listen to those people? You know, it's creepy and stuff like that." And I said, "Oh, that's just chill." And one more story about it. Let me say about the dynamics of us. We were taking him out on our little daily jaunts. Every single day we have to take him out. Then we bring him, get him a hamburger or something. He'd say, "Give me one of them cappuccinos, Mikey Mike." He's the one who nicknamed me Mikey Mike, and a couple people still call me that until today.
Oh, man.
And so I'd sit down, get him his cheeseburger or something, let him eat and stuff. Then we talked a little bit, and he was a tough dude. I mean, he was. I'd find all the serial murders that I ended up arresting, convicting 7 serial murders, well, 6 besides him, and but he was by far, the one dude. If I thought I was gonna get in a humbug with him, it would be, who's gonna come out of it alive. I mean, no doubt about it. So one day he's we go for a little trip. We had a van, and we're getting out of the van, and Cloyd was in the back seat with him, and we're taking to go to get lunch or something in our office, and Cloyd's got a sawed-off shotgun, and he goes, "Cloyd, man, what do you got that gun for?" And Cloyd says, "Well, if you try something, you try to run or try something, I'm going to shoot you with it." "Oh, you want to do that?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I would." No, and then I catch the end of this conversation. I lock up the car and I come behind, and Cloyd's going, "Look out, Mike! I think he's running, man. I think he's running. He's making a move." And Julie's just going, "Oh man, stop that shit, would you? Man, just stop that stuff, And I just kind of roll my eyes, thinking, "Oh my God, what I got myself."
So that guy had he had a big physical prowess then.
Oh yeah, he was a big lean guy, and then I seen him when I retired. The day before I retired, I had to go to one of the prisons. It wasn't Walla Walla; it was somewhere else.
Monroe, probably.
Yeah, no, it was maybe it was. But anyway, I go to prison. And, I had to go see somebody else, and another mass killer, and then I said, "As long as I'm here, I'm going to see Chili." So they bring him into the room. Now, once again, I haven't seen him for 20 years. And now he's like about 50 pounds heavier. He still has these big, huge glasses on, and he's kind of looking at me. And he was always super friendly with me, kind of like me. He was always a little leery of Cloyd, Maybe I don't know if the shotgun story had a little to do with it.
Well, that's because Cloyd's got that "I'm going to put you away for good" vibe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you another story about that about another serial killer that I had that I said, I'll bring Cloyd with me. So anyway, but that's how Chili was. He just looked around. Oh, he'd be, "Oh man, I don't know." So he goes, "Well, I go check on him in prison." He goes, "Yeah, where's your buddy Steiger at?" I said, "He's working a case right now, but he sends his love." "Yeah, I bet he does." And
damn, Cloyd, you had an effect on that guy, huh?
Oh yeah, he didn't like him. So, but he was kind of cold to me that day too, and says, "Hey, it wasn't my fault. I put you in jail here for the rest of your life." But he's one of the few guys out of all the serial murders I did. Like I said, I think I did end up doing 7 of them. I think only.
Is that guy still alive, Chili?
Yep.
Oh, he's alive. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, he's alive. He's got.
I actually saw him in prison a couple of years ago. I had a criminologist friend that from Toronto that was in town. He goes, "Hey, would you take me to see Dwayne?" I go, "Yeah." So we went to the prison and saw Dwayne and pulled him out. And one of the things he said to me right from the beginning, which kind of interesting, is he said, "Man, this serial killer thing wasn't as glamorous as I thought it was going to be."
Yeah, not like that Night Stalker. That was nonsense. Like the people in the courtroom, the girls in there, like I don't understand that. I can't comprehend that. This guy was legit murdering people brutally, and he had fans.
A lot of them do.
That's scary. That's a scary thought.
Says something about the psychology of the people that are glomming onto him.
Who the hell's like, "Hey man, that guy's ripping people apart. I can't wait to marry him."
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, where he is every night.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No questions
Why
of
don't you
infidelity.
behave?
Yeah.
Cloyd, before Homicide, you were in sex crimes, you said, yeah?
I was, yeah.
Did you start finding parallels between Homicide and sex crimes early on?
Oh, yeah. There are some, yeah. I mean, well, first of all, you realize how depraved people are. I mean, before you go, you live a naive life. You don't realize how many depraved people there are out there. When you work sex crimes, you realize they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And, some of the people I dealt with, it was just very similar to Homicide. Not all of them, of course.
Right.
But it got me, I gained a lot of great experience there. It was a great job for me.
Yeah, I imagine when you're working as you've seen the homicides or in sex crimes, I'm sure you came across a lot of the homicides. Was there any point where there was a homicide while you were in sex crimes that you later found out that had something to do with a serial killer or a murder in general?
Well, no, when I was in sex crimes, I did work a couple cases where people end up killing the victim. And they weren't dead when I got the case, but they ended up dying later. And so I did. They weren't serial killers necessarily, but they were like rapists and who severely injured people. And then they lingered in the hospital for weeks and then finally died, and it became a homicide. So there were several of those cases.
What, like the serial killer thing too, I've noticed, it didn't seem to be mentioned at all, prior to the 50s. So you didn't really hear. I'm not even sure they coined the phrase serial killer at that point yet.
We know the phrase serial killers is relatively new. They've been around, since the 1800s, but they didn't use that phrase serial killer. It just, I forgot. I used to know the first case that was involved in. I can't remember what it was, but these, first of all, they didn't link these cases necessarily back in those days. They were just individual cases. Of course, Jack the Ripper was a serial killer, but there were others, H.H. Holmes or whatever, and all these other guys. It's been around forever. It's just that communication and the way that these things are documented has improved over the years.
Yeah,
John Wayne Gacy.
John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, that
absolutely.
guy, man. I just got chills because I, for the first time, read about him about a week
That guy
ago.
was a clown.
I mean, he was weird though. But yeah, he was a clown. Yeah, that's right.
He was a clown. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. But it's when you read about his interviews and things he stated. My God, what world does he live in?
Yeah, a different world than you and I.
I mean, it sounds like he felt like, well, why did they bust me? Like,
exactly. What did I do wrong?
Honestly, that's
just like Garrett Ridgway when he was arrested and he's being drugged around. He tells the detectives, "I thought I was doing you a favor by getting these prostitutes off the street."
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that was a good deal. Thanks.
Yeah. And I feel bad because prostitutes, they're people too, and I see why they're victimized because they just. Yeah. I guess in the eyes of the serial killers, like, well, who's going to look for them?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly, and they're also low-hanging fruit, right? Anybody can get them. They're easy because they'll get in the car with anybody. Just like Dwayne Harris, if you promised them crack cocaine, they would follow you anywhere.
Damn.
And so it's low-hanging fruit. It's not even a challenge.
They can't do it today, right? They all have cell phones. They all stay connected.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
They all have social media.
Well, that's why you're never going to see. You're never going to see the numbers, like the Bundy numbers or the Ridgway numbers. Between that and forensic evidence, and they just catch them a lot sooner because of the forensics available now.
Yeah, that's a question I got hit with, by the way. Are serial and it's hard to answer that even for you guys because we don't know, right? Are they advancing with technology? Are they getting smarter with they
can't
forensics?
Possibly, because the act of a serial killer in a sexual psychosexual motivation requires that intimate contact that inevitably leaves so much more forensic evidence.
Yeah, like this. Here, let me read this. This email. The guy says, "Well, how do you know it's just not getting rid of? How do you know they're not just getting rid of the bodies?" And my reply to him was, "Sir, are you a serial killer?"
Yeah. Well, they could be, but those people end up missing. They find the bodies. You can't get rid of them forever. Yeah,
especially in cities. Like, it's not like there's like a convenient place in a city to hide someone, right?
I mean, where we are in the Seattle area, there's the mountains and stuff that a lot of places that dump bodies, and that's the same places that Ted Bundy dumped bodies and Gary Ridgway dumped bodies.
Yeah, you know, after speaking to you and Mike, I started watching this program on Netflix, Catching the Killer, and it seems like Seattle's a hot spot, and Florida.
That's what they always say, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's what people always said. You know, all the serial killers from here, and of course, obviously, we know with Ted Bundy and Ridgway, we had more than our share. But then all of a sudden, when DNA kind of came around and stuff, and all of a sudden, everywhere has serial killers, and they all shoot a lot of them. I mean, everywhere, all over.
I agree. I don't necessarily believe that there are any more serial killers here than there are anywhere else.
I agree.
But people think so. They think so. But we had some of the big ones, like I said, Bundy, Ridgway, with huge numbers, and that's what brought it here. But although, 99% of serial killers nobody's ever heard of because they did 2 or 3 or 4, and that's it, right? And so they don't know who they are.
Yeah, that's like my running theory on the Zodiac. I don't think that was one guy. I think that was a group of guys.
A lot of people think that. They think there is a guy, and then there's several copycats. I was reviewing a case for a cold case group I'm involved with of a murder of an elderly woman in Pennsylvania, and she was murdered and raped, and she was like 80, and she was found naked in her house, and there was a pattern carved into her back with a knife. And I'm looking at it, I go, I know that pattern. What is that? Well, then I figured out it's the Zodiac killer pattern, the thing he did on his letters.
Wow.
And do I think that's a Zodiac killer? No, but I think it's somebody copying it, a copycat.
Yeah, I mean, just like people that emulate rock stars, and there's weirdos that emulate serial killers, I guess, right? I mean,
absolutely, there's a lot of them, yeah.
And then you think about the time of the Zodiac killing when that was happening. There's probably some other kills like, wow, this guy just did me a big favor. They're looking for him.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna be okay down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What people always said, though. Well, I think a lot of the serial killers, they have slowed up considerably around 2000, I believe it was. But all of our guys, most people we did with were like in the 60s and 70s, and then
yeah, you and Cloyd were in that era where you had to get out there and do work. You had to find it.
Well, yeah, we never thought. Like I say, when we did the first serial murder case here in Seattle, I never dreamed it. I don't think Cloyd, we never dreamed about that we'd be doing serial killers.
No.
And the day that we found the first body, we had a little thing. Remember that thing we had at the WAC, Cloyd? They put on, and we were talking to Ann Rule, and she was
Washington Athletic Club. That's
at the WAC, yeah, and they were talking about serial killers. Well, it was all very interesting, but I'm thinking, there ain't no way. Then all of a sudden I get the call. I get back to the office, and my partner said, we got a call out. We got to go up to the jungle, and we got this, that girl up there. We still, you just never thought you would ever do a serial case. And then all of a sudden you're starting to think, like when Cloyd and I are talking about the similarities, and then this whole deal with the shoelaces came apart, we're thinking, and that'd be, and of course the senior detectives, they're all calling BS on it. You guys gone to seen so many movies or something like that,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the other thing is these cases were all geographically very close.
Oh, yeah.
Within 1 or 2 square miles of each other, all 3 of these cases. So you got to look at that too.
Oh, 1 mile. Yeah, it was probably even less than 1 mile. 'Cause like you brought it up the one time when you were at Antoinette Jones' case, you could stand up on the side that next to I-90, and you could look at everyone at the other 2.
You could see the scenes. Yeah.
Here's how there. You could walk to these places at the same time. There's been no problem at all. We didn't initially put them together, especially the last one, because she was stabbed, and Chili strangled the first 2 girls and then tied them up. But this one, he stabbed them, and also
he cut her throat. Yeah,
cut her throat, and then they had when he was stabbing her in the buttocks when she was dead already.
Yeah, that's like picarism.
Picarism. That's exactly what it was. But we had a mixture of blood, because when she was a tough Native American girl, and when he pulled the knife and was going to cut her throat, she grabs hold of the knife, and then they start fighting. Well, he gets she pulls the knife, and he gets his hand cut, and he's bleeding out, and it's. Well, you went to that scene. It was a little bit chilly that morning, wasn't it, Cloyd?
Yeah, it was like 10 degrees, which it never gets that cold
Wow.
in Seattle. It's like exceptionally cold. and down in a stairwell outside. And, we eventually found his DNA on the stair rail, but that was long after we already identified him. We would have probably got him eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. When he actually, when he confessed to me, it's funny, he was confessed to me, we were still, at this point, we already knew that we had pretty sure that he was the guy now. But first we were playing this game for 3 weeks and we were, maybe 70% thinking this is the guy. And by the end, we knew it was him.
Yeah.
And because we had another prostitute that came forward, we were taking her we were putting her in a shelter or something, weren't we, Cloyd?
We were picking her up for somebody else had an unrelated murder she was a witness in, and we went to Redmond and picked her up. Yeah.
And she goes, matter of fact, I'm wearing these shoes now. She's a skinny little African-American girl. I mean, bone skinny. And she says, I said, yeah, well, you gotta be careful, because some there will try to kill you. She goes, well, this guy tried to kill me one time. And he was trying to tie me up and stuff. Yeah, his name was Chili Willie.
He said, try to tie me up with his shoelaces.
Yeah.
With my shoelaces. Yeah.
We're in the middle of our case. But just because you're in the middle of a serial murder case doesn't mean the time stops and you don't work other cases.
Yeah. Right.
No, we I think I worked like 3 cases at the same time I was doing Chili case. And we're working, but we're looking at, Cloyd's looking at me in the mirror, and I'm looking at her, and okay, we're going to take you to this hotel, and we're going to put you up, and blah, blah, blah. And she was petrified of him still. And the thing that happened to her when
she was 16 years old. She was 16 years old, man.
It was like, holy. But she was, street prostitute. And
it's heartbreaking to hear people so desperate that they're in that type of life. It's.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's inevitable. I wish there were ways to avoid it or fix it. I don't know the motivation for all of them, but it's still a heartbreaking thing that they're out there exploiting themselves for just to survive. And then you got these people like that guy who's preying on them. Here's a question. How often do serial killers evolve? Like when they change their MOs?
Well, they'll do that if they see that the police are zeroing in on one. They'll try to change it a little bit so they don't match up cases, because they follow the news very closely. And it reminds me of one time I was involved in a high-profile murder. It wasn't a serial case, but it was a high-profile murder. And a reporter I know from one of the TV stations calls me up and says, "Just give me some information. Give me something so I can put it out there. I'll help you." And I said, "Everything I tell you, I'm whispering right in the ear of the killer, because he's watching all this news, and you'll know where I am. I don't want to give you anything, because if I'm way off, you relax. But if he doesn't know where I am, he might get reckless and do something stupid." And that's exactly the truth, because these guys watch the news on their killings very closely.
Yeah, especially in today's age where they can just hop on their phone and just
absolutely
instantly learn what's going on. Right? That's going to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, well, they try to, especially the true serial killers, they try to get better all the time. They try to, they're bringing the tools with them, bringing the duct tape with them, bringing a mask with them.
Well, Ted Bundy changed his MO all the time. Yeah. I mean, and then he got out of control. He got so cocky, he got out of control. And that's when he killed Kimberly Leach in Florida, the 12-year-old girl. Yeah, he was reckless. And the same with the Chi Omega case. He was reckless because he was so cocky, and that's where he left the most evidence, right?
Yeah. And they get into a state where into a frenzy also. But it's been in my experience, they all think they're smarter than they really are. Chili was the classic example of that. He thought he was, he thought he was a rock star, and he was a rock star for cocaine, but they think they're so friggin' smart and stuff like that, and but they make so many mistakes. Then when they start, positioning the bodies and stuff like that, but I always tell people like Chili told me, it's nothing to do with sex, and I didn't really quite understand it at the time. He says that it's nothing about sex. It's just about killing. And that's exactly what it was. And later on, when I was doing the other serial killers that I've done, and they were having raping the women, and thralling them at the same time, or stabbing them at the same time, or bludgeoning them at the same time. It was nothing to do with the sex part. Their sex was doing the actual killing. That's why I always really thought they would have the sex, but to them it wasn't sex. The sex was the killing.
It was like a high. It sounds like.
Oh, they're frenzy, but I talked to these guys when I talked to them in prison. When I interviewed these, like I said, I ended up doing 7 of them. And at first you're saying, why don't you talk about something that happened 30 years ago? I don't remember that. How I can postpone that? And then I said, this is what we're going to end up doing. And then we're going to put you in the county jail, blah, blah, blah. When I'm charging you, I get you, He said, okay. You'll probably be doing that anyway. So, okay, I'll tell you what I remember. And he'd tell you explicitly exactly what happened, exactly what the color of the curtains were, what kind of ligature they used, what the girl was wearing, where they got the knife from, which drawer it was and stuff, what the weather was like. All they do, serial killers, they remember everything about that instant, that they relive that all the time because they're complete sociopaths and they just relive it over and over and over and over again.
Is that why they take trophies to help them remember?
Yes, that's really common for them, and they pull it out and they enjoy. I wrote a book about a serial killer that I didn't work on, but one of the things he did, he killed this girl and he took her watch. And he gave it to a girl he was seeing, and he said, see, because she kept saying, you see, you do all this stuff, but you don't make any money. He goes, see, I do get something for the things I do. And he gave her the watch of the victim of a serial killer. He killed because they do that. And every time we see the watch, of course, he's reliving the event. So
that's insanity,
yeah. Yeah, no kidding.
It's like,
people, the boy ain't right. That's what it says in the psychological evaluation.
It's the same thing we do with photographs, looking at memories of childhood, right? That's
yeah. You remember my kid's first t-ball game? Yeah. Well, I remember the girl I strangled in 1982. Yeah.
And then Mike, you worked a bunch of serial killers too, right? Okay.
Well, yeah.
Does it take a toll on you though?
We decided to. We started when I was in after I said the first case, the Chili Willy case was we were just regular homicide detectives. Then later on, I ended up going. Cloyd and I were partners, and then after a few years there, I said it's enough of me working with Cloyd. And then I said I'll go to cold case, and so an opening happened. And I worked in cold case, and then my partner retired. And I didn't fill the spot, so whenever I'd need help, I'd get my old partner Cloyd, and we'd go and we'd pick up the guys and. Sometimes that was good, sometimes it's bad. I'm currently writing a book about this one gentleman that he was kind of a unique serial killer because he would strangle and stab men and women to death and stuff, and over a period of like 20-something years. But when I ended up arresting him, I brought Cloyd with me, and I'm thinking I'm going to try to get this guy to talk. And he was like 70 years old at the time, but he was a hardened man. He spent like 50 years in prison, in and out of prison, doing robberies and stuff like that, or doing some killings and stuff. And Cloyd's driving. I'm in the back seat with the guy, and he is just being nasty with us. Yeah, you guys think you're like some Hollywood cops and stuff like that. And he's swearing and being nasty with us. And it's obvious. Wayne, we're not getting any confession from this guy. He's just going on talking stuff. And now Cloyd's in the front seat and he's yakking back at the guy. Hey, Mike, let's go. What do you think? We got a steak after we drop off this dipshit? What do you feel like eating? And matter of fact, what are you going to have there, buddy? Are you going to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Oh, screw you guys. Blah, blah. And I'm just looking out the window thinking, oh, there we go. This is perfect. And First, he was, saying he's innocent, but then all of a sudden in trial, then he admitted that, I was there, but I didn't do it and stuff like that. And he's dead now. And he was convicted.
Wow. Cloyd gets it out of him, huh?
Oh, yeah. He really got it out of him that time, There were a few cases like that,
Hey, Cloyd's throwing the jabs in the old ribs. That's actually a good dynamic. I like that. So speaking of cold cases, I want to reach out to more agencies. And I'm sure there's a bunch of reasons that prevents them from speaking about it. But I want to get more, like I was telling Cloyd and you this. I want to get cold cases on the show and missing persons. In fact, I had this idea, and I'm going to figure out how to go about it. At the end of every podcast I do, I'm going to have a missing persons case with their information because you don't know. You never know who's going to want to see that.
Yeah.
How would you think I'd go? Obviously, I'll have to communicate with agencies and find out what missing persons they have. I'm sure there's a laundry list, but I intend to do as many podcasts as possible. I might as well put the info up there. It's some kind of contribution I can make at the very minimum.
Well, you can go to NAMUS, NAMUS dot, I think it's gov or org, and it's a national missing person data bank, and it's got all the missing people from the entire country, and you could pick from there. But there are cold case people. There was a story just broke this morning, about a murder of a little girl in Spokane, Washington, about 300 miles east of us, from 1959. She was selling campfire mist door to door. She ended up missing. They found her a couple weeks later, dead, disposed and thrown away. And the detectives in Spokane, over the year, and when I was working at the AG's office, I looked at this case. I thought, this is one that can probably be solved. They found her body, and they were able to recover semen from her clothing, and they put it in CODIS, which is a national data bank, DNA data bank, and they got no hits. But they were smart enough. These guys did great work. They were smart enough to get the money to do genealogy on the DNA, and they were able to track it to three brothers. It was one of the three brothers through the genealogy. And so they looked at the three, and one of them had been dead for decades, but he had a daughter. They approached the daughter and said, "We tell her what's going on. We'd like to take your DNA and see if it seems likely that your dad did this." And she agreed, and she gave her DNA, and it said it showed a probability of paternity to this woman. So they got a warrant and exhumed the body of this guy who had committed suicide 40 years ago. And when they did that, they got his DNA and matched it, and he was the exact match to the killer that they'd found. And ironically, his daughter, this girl was 9 when he killed her, and he committed suicide when his own daughter was 9.
Wow.
And so literally that news just broke this morning.
Yeah.
It just shows you that, you just don't give up, and how all it takes is dedicated detectives to do the work. This guy's dead. I mean, there's no chance of prosecution now. He would be like almost 90 now anyway. But
peace of mind for the family, though.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
This we found the son of a bitch that did it, right?
Right.
That's your job. Your job is to find this son of a bitch that did this, and they did. So good to them. Good for them.
I mean, it's allows people to say, well, at least we know, because that would be.
You do know. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You know now. And the ironic thing, this guy was not in the case file at all as a potential suspect. They had no idea. 90% of the time, these guys, their name will be in the case file somewhere, but this guy wasn't, and he was completely off the radar. But it's ironic that he killed himself when his own daughter was 9, the age she was when he killed her.
Yeah,
you wonder what's going on there, right?
Yeah, that probably haunted by guilt.
You would think so. Maybe he's thinking, my own daughter's 9, and what would I feel like if something happened to her? Because he loves her, I'm sure he did, and he's racked by guilt over. But you wonder what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Well, this guy's killing 9-year-old girls, coming to his door selling campfire mints. So he's going to kill, rape, and murder this little girl.
And then you got to wonder if that was the only one, right?
Yeah, exactly. You do have to wonder that. He's obviously a pedophile, and it's just like. But in the end, like I said, it doesn't matter. 62 years later, they found the guy, and good for them for pulling it off the shelf and doing the work.
Is law enforcement revisiting a lot of cases now?
Well, I hope so. Yeah. I mean, they are the agencies that have the people to do this, but the problem is there's so many cases all over the country that can be solved, but they're sitting on a shelf somewhere and they don't have the time or the money to do it. And it's just like, if you just pull that down and do modern DNA testing, because the DNA capabilities have improved in the last 2 years more than the previous 50 years, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of somebody having the wherewithal to pull that case off the file and redo the testing that hadn't been done. When I review cold cases, they go, Yeah, we did DNA. Well, when did you do DNA? In 2003. I said, well, you didn't do DNA then because there's so much more now that you can do. Get it off the shelf and do it again. Use modern techniques to extract the DNA and get it done. But, a lot of places, they're just, first of all, small agencies that have one case that they don't know is part of a serial case because it's just one case to them. But this guy's been traveling over the country doing it, and they don't have the people, the expertise, or anything to do that. They just need to, reach out for help and get those cases done.
Yeah, I have an idea, crazy idea. I had Lenny DePaul on recently. You know who that is, right?
No, I don't know who that is.
Lenny DePaul was a U.S. Marshal, Secret Service agent. He was on the show Manhunters, Fugitive Task Force, and he's also was on Hunting Hitler.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah. I watched Hunting Hitler. That was a great show.
So I had Lenny on, and then you got you and Mike here. Maybe I don't know. I'm gonna go pitch to a network. You and Mike on cold cases, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll connect you and Lenny. Lenny has a clothing line for law enforcement. It's called Zero Dark 30, and I actually ordered some stuff, right? Because it's really cool. It's supportive of the cause. But yeah. Mike, you were in cold cases a long time, yeah?
I was in cold case for 12 years. Yeah, 12 years. And I had a partner for my first 4 years in there. And then when he retired, I didn't have the budget to keep another guy in there until we kind of flim-flam. We got another guy in there right when I was going to be leaving a couple of years. And but the problem is across the country, there's so few police detectives now. They're working the streets, and they're cutting these units because there's the bad rap that the cops are getting these
nonsense
days.
Yeah.
Oh, it's off the charts nuts. I don't even know what Seattle's at now with how many officers we have. I don't think they have 1,200 cops.
That's a frightening idea. Frightening.
Oh, it's well, what to ask people, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, the murder rate across the country is skyrocketing. And it's funny because I was on a podcast 2 years ago, and they were talking about cutting the budgets and stuff. What do you think about that? I said, well, the murder rate's going to go through the roof, and most of the people murdered are going to be young black males that these people say they care about, but they don't. But they're going to die because of this movement. And I don't know if I don't agree with that. Well, yeah, it's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, you got these people out there like, oh yeah, defund the police. It's so terrible what they did. But in the back of their mind, the majority of them they're opportunists, and they're seeing the opportunities.
Well, yeah, just some of the gang. I'm just not talking about the gang banging killings and stuff like that. People slinging the dope and stuff. No, Seattle is our homicides are so low compared to other cities. Now,
well, they were, yeah,
they were. But now they're really picking up. And you look at a town like just south of us. Look at Portland. I think Portland's doubled Seattle rate. I think they're over,
and they're a city half the size.
Yeah, I think they're over 80 homicides right now.
Yeah, and
you go to my hometown. You go to my hometown, Chicago, and it was great when all the homicides dropped nationally in the early 90s. Chicago didn't miss a beat. They had the exact same number they had the year before and the year before that. They were always around 550 homicides.
Yeah, I'd spoken to you last time, and I did some research afterward. I cannot. Why is that not on the news? That's a scary situation going on there. It's not like weekly. It's my hometown.
Come on, those people, those so they're only getting 730 homicides a year. You go to the south suburbs of Chicago, like where I was living at, that's where it's bad. Like we're going to Chicago where it's not too bad. But yeah, the south side, the west side of Chicago, it's off of the charts. I mean, what's going on over there, it's like that's more like homicides than they have, and more killings than they have in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. I mean, it's just completely nuts.
What do you guys think we should do? Like, if you had an idea of how? Here's one thing I know for certain: we need to build a campaign that appeals to the youth of America to become part of law enforcement. That needs to happen. Another thing I could say is, do some officers get into pressure situations and incidents happen? Sure. But if you, in basic training, if they just get basic jiu-jitsu and learn basic holds, it would avoid a lot of problems. You know what I mean? Or at least in my opinion. I would like to see an outreach for the youth, for people to get involved in law enforcement. We can't not have police. Nothing good's going to come of that at all. And for every time you defund them or you bash the police or anything like that, there's the opportunist out there who's smiling. He knows he's going to have his way real soon. And it's unfortunate.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the homicides will continue to grow. We're going to see it more in places like Seattle and Portland, places where it's been relatively, low compared to the cities, like, Chicago and Detroit.
Baltimore,
which is the same size as Seattle, except they have 300 more homicides than we have. Now you think about it, those numbers that's just crazy.
It is. It's upsetting, I mean,
300 homicides. And what are your chances? And the more homicides you have, the lesser chance you have of solving those other cases. Because you don't have the manpower. You don't have the time. You're next up again. Let's go. We got another call out. They're just going. It's just bizarre. So, and now that police are handcuffed, and any call they take, anytime they have to take paper, it's going to take them 3 hours to do it. So now the cops are just kind of standing there. You're not getting, you don't have the cops to say, we're down a couple hundred policemen already in Seattle, let alone I don't know what these other cities are like. And you're taking homicide detectives and you're putting them on the street, working in patrol units. It's like, it's bizarre.
Yeah, you're spreading them thin, right? Where a homicide detective should be out there just, solving murder cases versus like the general cops that keep the peace.
In big cities, you got your sexual assault unit detectives, like I say, that's what you work. Robbery detectives, that's what you work. And you build an expertise in that, doing that.
And by the way, so people know, when you're defunding police and you're campaigning against them, you're not hurting the police. You're hurting the people. You're hurting you're hurting the communities. That's who you're hurting, because they're going to be the victims. Ultimately, the guy who's sitting in the background, who's contemplating, who's seeing the opportunity arise, he's going to victimize those communities. And unfortunately, there's going to be no one there to respond. That's the tragedy.
All the people the people that I talk to, and I live in the city myself, but I talk to my friends, my neighbors and stuff like that. And they all get it, they all agree. They all get it, and these people that are complaining about, the cops are bad or something, or he shot this guy, or the cop did something bad, and not saying that cops never do anything bad. Yes, they do. Are there bad cops? Yes, they are. And is the percentage 1%? No. Is it like a 1/10%? Maybe. Compared to, and there's a whole lot of policemen, and they're very, very professional out there, but what they're doing to these officers
it's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
And it's got to stop. What's going to happen is someone's
going to have to pay the price for it.
Yeah, and it's going to be the community and the citizens. That's who's going to get I don't think people understand. Yes, did some cops do something bad? Sure. But that's, again, like you said, there's bad everything. There's a bad everyone and every kind of outfit, right? Like, look, I don't even remember the case, but there was a nurse who was killing people. She was killing people.
There's been several of those, actually.
That's insanity. These are people caring for your loved ones and are poisoning them because they're justified in their own mind. That's a scary thought. Are they going to defund the hospitals? So it's unfortunate. I would like to see it turn around. Again, going back to cold cases where you spent, some years, it comes down to, it's hard to say what do they do about it because, especially with this defunding thing, but I don't know. I feel like there should be a show with Cloyd and Mike. All right. Yeah. And you guys put a task force together. I'll connect you guys to Lenny, see if an idea of Bruce. Because I don't know
if I want to work at Cloyd again. No.
Yeah.
Cloyd got me in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble.
Yeah, at least it was exciting, right?
Oh yeah, it was exciting. I almost got my arm broken by him and a guard and another. You remember that, Cloyd? What I'm talking about?
No, I don't think. You must have somebody.
Yeah. And our suspect's name was Mitch, I believe. Was that his name?
And, doesn't sound familiar to me, but I don't know.
What town was that in? Anyway, it wasn't Houston.
He's trying to trip you up, Cloyd. You see that? He's trying to trip you up.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. I'm too smart to fall for that one, though.
Yeah, we're down south, and we're going to extradite the prisoner, and all of a sudden, Cloyd's talking to the guy, and the kid confesses that gang banging thing. He kills the guy. Yeah. And how much time I'm looking at? And Cloyd says, 15 years, but don't worry, it'll go by like that. And the kid's sitting next to me, and he's big guy. And he looks at me, looks at Cloyd, and he starts banging his head on the table. boom, boom, boom. Jumps up. He's banging his head into the wall. We're trying to hold him. The guard comes in there. We wrestle the guy. The guard first thought that we were beating the guy up. Take the guy out of there, take him to his cell. And before they're on one side, I'm on the other side, and he's swinging back and forth. They swing him toward me, and my arm gets caught between the cell block and 700 pounds of men. Crash. And then they throw the guy, throw him into his cell and stuff. And I look at Cloyd. I'm holding my arm that is black and blue already, and I go, 15 years going to go by like that, huh? And Cloyd just kind of laughs.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
The next day, they call us from the jail. We're in our hotel in Houston. And I'm listening to Cloyd talking. Then Cloyd, the guy says, yeah, well, your suspect, he hung himself in the cell last night. And but we cut him down and he survived. And Cloyd goes, you saved him? And I'm thinking, oh, geez, here we go again, So we didn't have to transport him. We had Air Con actually transport that guy.
Yeah, listen. A cold case show with you and Cloyd, I'd watch that. I'd watch that in a heartbeat. I mean, again, the dynamic, it's going to be fun. But at the end of the day, it's not so much about the reward than it is giving peace of mind to families, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's it.
And
think about it.
I think it would spin a positive light on law enforcement for a show like that. I was talking to Lenny DePaul about that. Like when he had the Manhunter show, I watched that religiously, and you saw the dynamic of that unit, like the different sexes, different races. They came together like a family. And they went out there and they busted criminals, and I was fascinated by that show. And I think a show with you and Cloyd would be great. Personally, I'd watch it. I'll come with a title and I'll email you guys with a few ideas. All right.
Okay.
Before we close,
you're on.
Yeah, before we close, just name your books because I want to get that out there too.
No, mine is called The Seattle Jungle Killer,
right.
And I'm writing a second book now, but it's untitled. So but Seattle Jungle Killer, and you can read about the jungle killer that I was talking about, and hear some more stories about Cloyd and I and some of our escapades. Perfect.
Cloyd, your book again?
Well, I have two books out. One, the first is Homicide: The View from Inside the Yellow Tape, which is talks about several of the murders I worked over the years, and the other is Seattle's Forgotten Serial Killer, Gary Jean Grant, that I wrote when a publishing company called me and asked me to write it. So they're both on Amazon. Look them up.
Bet. Cloyd, Mike, I enjoyed having you guys. Really good conversation.
Yeah.
Again, I can't say it enough. I would watch the Cloyd and Mike show in a heartbeat. No thoughts about it. So,
that's what our bosses called it, matter of fact.
Yeah, I think that would make for a great show. And I think it'd have a good positive message. I think nothing but good could come from that. And
there you go.
I'm one of those, man. I'll push for it. I'll lobby.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, you have a good night.
All right. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you guys for being on.
Bye.
Bye-bye.